disrupted.
America that I thought weird thing to happen.
Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So, there's a shocking story about what happened to Kit Klarenberg, who is a editor at the Greyzone. After he arrived back in the UK, he was detained by British counter-terrorism police forces for the simple act of journalism. And what's even more shocking than that the incident happened and detaining a journalist for the simple act of journalism is crippling the ethics and the prominence of the freedom of the press and so on, is the lack of coverage of this. And the fact that mainstream media once again completely points their nose away from a journalist being detained for doing their credible work, and how it's threatening to the industry and people should be aware of it. The same mainstream media that points their nose away against, against Julian Assange and his captivity. It's hurting their own when they do that. So it is just, it's completely insane that this happened, but it's even more insane that this is not being reported as much as it should be, even with some predominant YouTubers not really mentioning this story. I've only seen this from a few instances, but here's this here from the Greyzone. British police detained journalist Kit Klarenberg, interrogate him about the Greyzone. Counter-terrorist police detained journalist Kit Klarenberg upon his arrival in London and subjected him to a 5-hour interrogation about his political views and reporting. So, it goes on to an article here from the Greyzone, reporting that as soon as journalist Kit Klarenberg landed in his home country of Britain on May 17, 2023, 6 anonymous plainclothes counter-terror officers detained him. They quickly escorted him to the back room, where they grilled him for over 5 hours about his reporting for this outlet. They also inquired about his personal opinion on everything from the current British political leadership to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. At one point, Klarenberg's interrogators demanded to know whether the Greyzone had a special arrangement with Russia's Federal Security Bureau to publish hacked material. During Klarenberg's detention, police seized the journalist's electronic devices, SD cards, fingerprinted him, took DNA swabs, and photographed him intensively. They threatened to arrest him if he did not comply. Klarenberg's interrogation appears to be London's way of retaliating for the journalist's blockbuster reports exposing major British and U.S. intelligence intrigues. In the past year alone, Klarenberg revealed how a cabal of Tory national security hardliners violated the Official Secrets Act to exploit Brexit and install Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. In October 2022, he earned international headlines with his expose of British plans to bomb the Kerch Bridge, connecting Crimea to the Russian Federation. Then came the report on the CIA's recruitment of 2 9/11 hijackers this April, a viral sensation that generated massive social media attention. Among Klarenberg's most consequential exposés was his June 2022 report unmasking British journalist Paul Mason as a UK security state collaborator hell-bent on destroying the Greyzone and other media outlets, academics, and activists critical of NATO's role in Ukraine. And we touched upon that article because of how barbaric it is that the intelligence community is collaborating with with the people of big tech companies to orchestrate this, to do this global-wide censorship campaign to people that were investigating, that had boots on the ground in Ukraine, reporting the war, and doing this giant-wide censorship campaign to the point of, cutting down academics and professors, silencing them out, allowing, people that were born in Russia, not allowing them to play in sports. It was a global-wide campaign through, the intelligence communities of the CIA and the MI6 and the national security state and NATO having this global alliance to censor out people and silence out information and silence out a different perspective of this war. It's just crazy. Because Klarenberg's reporting on Mason relied heavily on leaked emails, Mason falsely accused him of assisting a Russia state-backed hack and leak disinformation campaign. Mason also reported the leak of emails to the British police. Emma Bryant, a self-styled disinformation expert who participated in Mason's campaign to sabotage NATO critics, dispatched lawyers to demand Klarenberg remove all of his articles that mention her from the internet. The lawyers' letters also threatened costly super injunctions to prevent further reporting and challenge the authenticity of the email's consent. The cease and desist letters additionally leveled false and defamatory allegations against Klarenberg, including that he was personally involved in hacking her email and Twitter account, which the Greyzone has come forward and said that was not true. It was a whistleblower inside the campaign. They got the information, and again, showing the fact that people are more angry, and this is how the propaganda machine, works on people. People are so diluted into the anger of a reporter like Klarenberg, but they're not angry at the people that are doing the nefarious stuff. The same way more, people are angry at Julian Assange for reporting the Hillary Clinton emails, but they're not angry at the emails. They're not angry at Hillary Clinton's campaign used to oppress you. They're not angry at the abuser. They're angry at the person telling you you're being abused. Which is why, saying that we're children of denial of abusive alcoholics seems to fit. That's kind of the perfect analogy to how we're being propagandized, is that we're more angry at the people telling us that we're being abused and how we're being abused than the abuser, the one who's actually doing nefarious stuff. So he was detained in a British prison. He was detained in a British airport for the simple act of being an investigative journalist and informing people. And then the article goes on, did the bogus and obvious malicious complaints by Paul Mason or Emma Bryant prompt the UK police to detain and investigate Klarenberg? Klarenberg's reports contain neither falsehoods nor anything approaching disinformation, which is precisely why intelligence-linked figures like Mason are so frustrated by their existence. Despite Mason Bryant's allegations, there is not even hard evidence that Russia hackers were the source of the leak. While reporting on the leaked material, Klarenberg engaged in some journalistic practice that the West's most predominant legacy papers, from the New York Times to the Washington Post, depend on to break news themselves. In fact, Thomas Rid, a self-described disinformation expert and professor of strategic studies at Johns Hopkins University, has stated that journalists should not shy away from covering the leaks first reported by Klarenberg. It therefore appears that British authorities did not detain Klarenberg for any legal breaches, but because he reported factual stories that exposed the national security state's own violations, both domestic and international laws, as well as the malign plots of its own media lackeys. So that is why they're angry. And obviously, Paul Mason has some contacts with the law enforcement in the UK and put a hit piece on Klarenberg for accurately reporting and exposing for who he really is. And he got embarrassed. He got exposed. People are realizing his criminality and realizing his past, and they put a hit piece on a journalist for being a journalist. And we see this too often, get swept under the radar, and it gets underreported drastically. And it just amazes me because people like Rachel Maddow should understand that being in journalism in this industry, once you hurt, even if you don't agree with Kit Klarenberg, once one goes down, it's hurting your industry. They can go after you next. That's why you have a principled stance to something like this. The same way I have a principled stance when it comes to freedom of speech. Because when they take one person down, they can go after anybody. The floodgates are open. So here's the this is the official document that they gave to Klarenberg when he was detained in the airport. And it says notice of detention under Schedule 3 to the Counterterrorism and Border Security Act. And it goes on by saying you have been detained under paragraph 4 of Schedule 3 to the Counterterrorism and Border Security Act. This is so that an examining officer may exercise powers under paragraph 1 or 2 of that schedule for the purpose of either determining whether you appear to be a person of who or has been engaged in hostile activity, or whether your presence in the border area is connected with your entering or leaving Northern Ireland. So they're literally making a mumbo jumbo because they can't just come out and say, we're arresting you because you're a journalist. They're slewing words together, being like, well, you may or may not be a hostile, or may not be doing illegal activity. You may or may not be leaving Northern Ireland, and we're concerned by that, and there might be connections, but we're not actually sure about this, so we're gonna have to detain you for a long time. You will not. So it goes on by saying you will not be examined under this power for more than 6 hours, beginning with the time you first were questioned under Schedule 3. He was interrogated for 5 hours. I guess the last hour was for a lunch break. They didn't want to do the 6 hours, so they stopped it at 5. You are not under criminal investigation and are not under arrest on suspicion of having committed an offense. So why are you detaining him then? Why are the police surrounding you and detaining you and questioning you for 5 straight hours if you're not under a criminal investigation or have suspicion or committed an offense? Why is this even happening then? Jeez. For this reason, you are not being issued with a caution, and you will not have the right to remain silent. So that's why they're doing this. That's why they can't say that you committed an offense, because then otherwise they would have to give you your Miranda rights. They'd have to tell you that you have the right to remain silent. You have to give them a warning, and you have to give them the same laws and abiding restriction as any other citizen. But they won't do that. They won't do that. They'll twist it around so that he will remain talking, and you don't have the right to remain silent. That's why they're saying he has not committed an offense. Should the circumstances change during the course of the examination, you will be notified. And then it gives them a list of duties, answering questions, make sure you give proper information, give the examining officer a bunch of documents, declare yourself, yada, yada, yada. If you willfully fail to comply with any of these duties, or willing obstruct or seek to frustrate a search or examination conducted under Schedule 3, you will be prosecuted under paragraph 23 of Schedule 3. Any answer or information that you provide orally in response to a question asked during the examination cannot be used as evidence in criminal proceedings. This, however, will not be the case where you are prosecuted for willfully failing to comply with the duty imposed, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, you get the gist. You get the gist. And just how ridiculous that is. So, of course, Max Blumenthal, an editor of the Greyzone, co-founder, puts this out. British authorities did not detain him for any legal breaches, but the fact that he was reporting stories that embarrassed Paul Mason. And since Paul Mason is higher up in the national intelligence community in the UK, he was able to contact people of the British police to detain a journalist that was exposing him. And they're trying to manipulate this so they could silence out credible journalism, so they could promote more propaganda and silence out the critics, people that are holding people accountable. So, and this has been going on for a while, because I want to highlight the emails that Kit Klarenberg has also gotten over the years of just the threats, because you're exposing corrupted, powerful figures as an individual. They're gonna get scary threats. So, for example, this one, the police notified Mr. Klarenberg by saying the purpose of this email is to request your attendance at a police station for a caution +3 interview. This is a PACE interview without arrest. There are allegations against you relating to offenses of harassment, malicious communication, and offenses under the Computer Misuse Act. Misuse Act. I can't. That's a thing in the UK. I don't even know what that means. My intention is to ask you questions relating to this allegation. Document any response you give to choose to give them. Or how about this one? In regards to the case against you, I have closed the case and no further action will be taken in this matter. I have been requested not to disclose the details of the complaint in this matter. However, I can disclose that there was insignificant evidence to proceed. The threshold for a circulation to be arrested are also not meant to show. Should you attend the UK in the future, you will not be arrested for matters relating to this allegation. So they can't arrest him because he's making factual points. He's accurately reporting on this guy. So they can't arrest him, but they're going to continue to harass him until the critical journalism stops. And that's what they do with Julian Assange. That's what they do with other prize-winning journalists that are reporting accurately on holding very corrupted people like Paul Mason accountable. They're getting continued barrage and attacks and smears and desecrated by these powerful figures, because the more we expose them and understand exactly what they're doing behind closed doors, they're going to continue to harass journalists and violate their own ethics, violate their own laws to cover up their criminality. And since they have no hard evidence against someone like Kit Klarenberg, they can't arrest him, but they can have him detained and ask a bunch of random questions, like how much your rent is and how if your utilities are coming with the rent. Because that was one of the questions they were asking him. Just and the fact that no other journalists, not even the YouTubers like TYT or Sam Seed or any of those self-proclaimed journalists are even reporting on this, is just astonishing. It's just astonishing. More so than the people retweeting this, obviously being trolls, claiming this as a victory. Because apparently taking down a journalist that they don't really favor is somehow a victory for journalism as a whole. When they don't realize that this is actually hurting the principle, the ethic of fact-based journalism. This is hurting yourselves. This is hurting your own. And the fact that you're applauding it just shows what a sheep you are. It shows how manipulative you are. And how you're not willing to actually investigate things for yourself and just go with the flow of the intelligence community. Because Kit Klarenberg was definitely onto something. They can't charge him with anything. So they're just going to continue to harass him for time and time to come, because of the simple act of being a journalist.